Stop! Don't move! Listen to the room you are sitting in right now. You hear the hum of your computer fan? The traffic outside? The refrigerator compressor cycling on? To you, that is background noise. To the threat we are discussing today, that is a beacon. We spend so much time talking about ballistic armour, food rotation and water filtration that we have ignored the one survival metric that matters when the apex predator hunts by echolocation and acoustic signature: the physics of silence. Today, we are not talking about being quiet. We are talking about acoustic dampening, the inverse square law of sound propagation, and the military doctrine of noise discipline in a world where dropping a spoon on a tile floor is a death sentence. This is the Quiet Place reality check. If you want to survive the first 48 hours, you need to understand how sound waves betray you. I'm Tom, and this is Survival Curriculum. Usually, we talk about long-term logistics. Today is different. Today is about immediate, tactical adaptation to a sensory threat. We're going to break down the science of sound, how it travels through walls, how it bends around corners, and how to build a noise floor that hides your heartbeat. If you are serious about understanding the physics of survival, you need to be in this briefing until the end, because the strategy shifts entirely once we get to the concept of acoustic camouflage. Let's secure your spot in the survivor pool right now. Hit that like button so the algorithm knows you're paying attention, and let's get into the nightmare scenario. It started on the Tuesday at 02 o'clock hours. The first indication wasn't an explosion or a siren, it was the silence. The crickets stopped. The neighbourhood dogs, usually barking at shadows, went dead quiet. Then I heard it. 3 houses down, Mr. Henderson dropped a glass jar on his patio. In a normal world, that is a minor annoyance. In this new reality, it was a dinner bell. The sound was sharp, high frequency, cutting through the cool night air. Within 4 seconds, something moved over the rooftops. It didn't look, it swiveled. A blurred shape, bioluminescent sensors pulsing in rhythm with the echoes. It triangulated the impact point of that glass before the shards had even stopped skittering. Henderson screamed. That was his second mistake. The scream provided a continuous, high-amplitude source. The thing was on him instantly. No wasted movement, just a direct vector from the roof to his throat. I watched from behind my blackout curtains, holding my breath, realizing that the physics of our world had just changed. Sound was no longer just communication, it was a trajectory. Most people died that first night because their instinct was to amplify. When humans are terrified, we get loud. We shout for family members, we slam doors, we rev engines. I saw a family 2 streets over try to load their SUV. The slamming of the trunk lid registered at probably 90 decibels. In a low ambient environment, that sound wave travelled merely a mile. They didn't make it out of the driveway. They treated the threat like a visual hunter, thinking if they moved fast, they could outrun it. But you cannot outrun sound. Sound travels at roughly 343 metres per second. The moment you slam that door, the information of your location hits the predator almost instantly. The panic response, the yelling, the running, the heavy mechanical noises, creates a chaotic acoustic environment that these things thrive in. They don't need to see you, they just need you to vibrate the air. Let's look at the hard physics. Sound follows the inverse square law. In a free field, every time you double the distance from the source, the sound pressure level drops by 6 decibels. That sounds like a lot, but it isn't enough when the baseline is absolute silence. If you drop a wrench on concrete, that's an impulsive sound of about 100 dB. At 10 metres, it's still 80 dB. At 20 metres, 74 dB. At 40 metres, 68 dB. In a silent night where the background noise floor is maybe 30 dB, a 68 dB spikes is a massive anomaly. It stands out like a flare in a dark room. Furthermore, different frequencies travel differently. Low frequencies, like the thrum of a diesel engine or heavy footsteps, have long wavelengths that diffract or bend around obstacles. They travel far and penetrate walls. High frequencies, like snapping a twig or the click of a rifle safety, are more directional and easily absorbed by air and humidity, but they give precise directional data. Your goal isn't just quiet, it is to eliminate transient peaks, those sudden, sharp spikes in the waveform that break the threshold of the background noise floor. Here is where it gets worse. We aren't just dealing with passive listeners. We are dealing with active echolocation. The creature I saw on Henderson's roof wasn't just listening for the glass. It was emitting a series of ultrasonic clicks, sweeping the area like a radar dish. This changes the tactical reality completely. If you are standing perfectly still in an open field, you are silent, but you are not invisible. The sound waves they emit will hit your body and bounce back to them. Hard surfaces reflect sound. Soft surfaces absorb it. If you are wearing a hard-shell rain jacket, a tactical helmet, and carrying a rifle, you are a walking acoustic reflector. You light up on their biosonar. To survive this, we have to move beyond just shutting up. We have to look at materials engineering. We need to become acoustically absorbent black holes. Day 3. The food in the pantry was gone. I had to move to the basement stash, but the stairs were the problem. They were old wood. Every step was a potential squeak that would resonate through the frame of the house. I had spent the last 48 hours wrapping my feet in layers of wool socks. No shoes. Shoes are death. The rubber sole on a hardwood floor produces a squeak friction transient noise that cuts right through the ambient hum. I stood at the top of the landing. The creature was on the roof again. I could hear its claws clicking on the shingles. I had to descend 12 steps without generating a frequency above 20 Hz. I shifted my weight, rolling from the outside edge of the foot to the inside, slowly applying pressure. It took me 45 minutes to go down one flight. My quads were burning, shaking. A drop of sweat hit the floorboards. To me, it sounded like a bomb. Above me, the clicking stopped. It was listening. The people who geared up like they were going to war were the first to go. I found a guy about a week later, fully kitted out. Plate carrier, AR-15, tactical backpack with all the webbing. He looked cool. He was also shredded to ribbons. Why? Because tactical gear is loud. Cordura nylon swishes when you walk. Velcro is arguably the loudest invention in human history. Ripping a Velcro pouch open is a 90 decibel event. Metal zipper pulls jingle against each other. Plastic buckles click. Carabiners clank against rifles. This guy was a walking orchestra of high-frequency metallic transients. In a firefight, nobody cares about the sound of your magazine pouch rubbing against your belt. In a stealth survival scenario, your gear is your enemy. He tried to be tactical, but he failed the physics test. He didn't dampen his loadout. You need to audit your gear right now. This is called Noise Discipline 101 in the military, but we are taking it to an obsessive level. First, remove all metal-on-metal contact. Every zipper pull needs to be cut off and replaced with 550 cord. Every plastic buckle needs to be wrapped in duct tape or ranger bands to prevent that hollow clack when they impact. Second, look at your fabrics. Synthetics like Gore-Tex and stiff nylon are noisy, they rustle. You want natural fibres or soft shell fleece, materials that absorb their own friction noise. Third, soft interfaces. If you are carrying a rifle, the sling attachment points cannot be metal clips. You use paracord loops. If you put a water bottle down, it shouldn't be hard plastic on a table. You glue a layer of felt or neoprene to the bottom of the bottle. Everything you touch must have a buffer layer. You are essentially soundproofing your personal existence. Silence isn't an absence of noise. It is the suppression of friction. But here is the catch. Sound doesn't just travel through air. It travels through solids, often faster and with less attenuation. This is structure-borne noise. If these creatures have sensors coupled to the ground, like certain arachnids or seismic sensors, they can feel your footsteps through the floorboards before they hear them. Walking barefoot helps, but it doesn't eliminate the mass transfer. Every time you step, you are sending a low-frequency shockwave through the structure of your house. If you are in a wood frame house, that vibration travels through the joists to the foundation. To combat this, you have to change your gait. It's called the fox walk. Knees bent, centre of gravity low. You place the toe first, feel for debris or squeaky boards, then roll to the heel. You never commit your weight until the silent placement is confirmed. It is exhausting. It is slow. But if you walk heel to toe with a heavy stride, you are drumming a rhythm into the earth that these things can track from 3 blocks away. By week 2, we had fortified the basement. But fortified doesn't mean sandbags and steel doors. It meant mattresses. We stripped every bed in the house. We nailed egg crate foam, heavy winter quilts, and old sleeping bags to the walls and the ceiling. It looked like the inside of a padded cell. The air was stale, hot, and suffocating, but it was dead silent. My daughter had a cough, a lingering cold. In the world before, you'd give her cough syrup. In this world, a cough is a breach of containment. We had a cough pillow, a dense memory foam cushion she had to bury her face into every time the urge hit. One night, the creature breached the front door upstairs. We heard the heavy thud of its body hitting the hallway floor. Then, the skittering of claws. It was directly above us. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight. We stood in that padded room, staring at the ceiling joists, knowing that only 6 inches of wood and a layer of dirty mattresses separated us from being torn apart. The creature paused. It clicked. The sound was muffled, soaked up by our insulation. It moved on. Most preppers build for ballistic protection. They want concrete, steel, brick. Those materials are fantastic for stopping bullets, but they are terrible for acoustic stealth. Hard, dense surfaces reflect sound. If you sneeze in a concrete bunker, the sound bounces around, amplifying, creating a standing wave that sustains the noise for longer. It's the echo chamber effect. If a creature clicks near a concrete bunker, the return signal is crisp and clear. You have created a perfect acoustic mirror. The people who holed up in industrial basements or tiled bathrooms were found easily because their shelters amplified their internal noises and reflected the external sonar probes. You don't want to be a hard target. You want to be a soft target, acoustically speaking. You want to be a void. To build a quiet place shelter, you need to understand the difference between sound isolation and sound absorption. Isolation stops sound from getting in or out. Absorption stops sound from bouncing. You need both. Mass-loaded vinyl, MLV, is the gold standard for isolation. Heavy, floppy sheets that hang loose and kill sound energy. If you don't have that, you use bookshelves filled with books. Irregular shapes, mixed density. Paper is great at absorption. Line your walls with them. For the windows, you don't just board them up, you create a plug. A layer of plywood, a layer of insulation, fiberglass or old blankets, and another layer of plywood. This creates a decoupled air gap. Sound loses energy trying to cross that gap. Cover the floors with rugs, then more rugs. The goal is to reduce the reverberation time, RT60, of the room to near zero. You want the room to sound dead. If you clap your hands and hear a zing or an echo, you are not safe yet. Add more mass, add more fuzz. However, even the best insulation struggles with low frequencies. Physics dictates that, to stop a sound wave, the barrier needs to be thick relative to the wavelength. A 50 Hz wave is about 22 feet long. Your mattress on the wall isn't stopping that. This means mechanical noises, generators, pumps, even the hum of a refrigerator are deadly. They emit low-frequency rumbles that pass through walls like they aren't even there. In this scenario, you cannot run a generator, period. The vibration through the ground and the low-frequency exhaust note are impossible to fully mask without industrial-grade engineering. You are back to the Stone Age. Passive systems only. And be careful with your own body. In a truly silent, insulated room, if you are pressed against a wall, your own heartbeat can couple with the structure. It sounds insane, but if these predators have sensitivity comparable to seismic sensors, leaning against the structural supports of your hideout could theoretically transmit a rhythmic biological thumping to the outside. Stay off the walls. We ran out of water on day 14. The rain collectors were dry. We had to go to the creek. We waited for a storm. Thunder is good. Wind is better. The chaotic noise of a gale-force wind crashing through trees creates a high noise floor. It masks the small mistakes, the snap of a twig, the scuff of a boot. We moved during the gusts. When the wind howled, we sprinted. When the wind died, we froze. It was a game of red light, green light, played with a monster that could hear your joints popping. We reached the creek. The rushing water was deafening. It felt safe. I started filling the jerry cans. The water bubbling into the plastic neck made a glug, glug sound. It was distinct, rhythmic, different from the white noise of the rapids. I looked up. On the opposite bank, 30 yards away, one of them was crouched, head cocked. It couldn't hear my footsteps over the river, but it could hear the pattern of the water filling the jug. Patterns attract attention. Chaos deflects it. The mistake I made was assuming that loud equals safe. White noise, like rain, wind, or a river, is broadband noise. It covers a lot of frequencies. But biological and mechanical sounds often have specific tonal qualities that cut through white noise. This is the cocktail party effect. You can hear your name spoken across a loud room because your brain is tuned to that specific pattern. These predators are the same. They filter out the random chaos of the wind and the river, and they lock onto the ordered sounds. The rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch of walking. The cyclical squeak of a bicycle chain. The glug, glug of a bottle. A pure tone, or a repeating rhythm, stands out mathematically against the background chaos. Thinking a storm makes you invisible is a fatal error. It only raises the threshold. It doesn't blind the sensor to patterns. So how do you move? You use sound masking tactically. You don't just wait for noise. You sync your actions to the peaks of the noise. This is timing, not just volume. If a plane flies over, assuming any are left, or a thunderclap rolls, you have a window of 3 to 5 seconds to do your violent actions. Kick open a door, smash a window for entry, start a car. Between those peaks, you are static. Furthermore, you need to break your rhythm. Humans are rhythmic creatures. We walk in a cadence. You must introduce irregularity. Step, wait, step, step, wait. Never create a loop. If you must communicate, do not whisper. Whispering is actually a high-frequency hiss that travels surprisingly well and is very distinct from natural sounds. It is better to use soft phonation, low, grumbling tones, or, ideally, learn basic sign language. Military units use hand signals for a reason. In this world, ASL, American Sign Language, is a Tier 1 survival skill. If you can't sign, you can't coordinate. We also need to talk about acoustic shadows. Sound acts like light. It can be blocked. If you are on the opposite side of a ridge or a large concrete wall from the predator, you are in a shadow zone. High frequencies will be blocked completely. Low frequencies will diffraction over the top, but they will be weaker. You need to map your terrain acoustically. Don't walk on top of the ridgeline. That is the worst place. Sound propagates from a high point in all directions, free of obstacles. You want to move in the valleys, in the gullies, using the earth itself as a baffle. But beware of thermal inversion. At night, the ground cools, and a layer of cold air sits below warm air. This causes sound waves to refract back down toward the ground instead of escaping into the sky. This means sound travels much farther at night than during the day. A sound that is safe at noon might be fatal at midnight, solely due to the temperature gradient of the air. We couldn't stay in the basement forever. The air was getting too bad. We needed to clear the area, but there were 3 of them patrolling the subdivision. We needed a diversion. I didn't throw a rock. Throwing a rock shows the trajectory of the throw. It points back to you. I used an egg timer and a children's toy, a monkey with cymbals. I taped them together and placed them in an abandoned car 2 blocks east. I set the timer for 20 minutes. We moved west, slow and low. 20 minutes later, we were 4 streets away. The timer ticked down. The monkey triggered. Clang, clang, clang! The reaction was instantaneous. A screech tore through the night. The 3 predators converged on that car with the violence of a missile strike. They tore the vehicle apart. We used the chaos of the metal rending and glass breaking to sprint, full sprint, to the highway. We weaponized sound. We used their own sensitivity to overload their OODA loop. But be careful. The throw a rock trick you see in movies is amateur hour. If you throw an object, the sound of the object hitting the ground is the second sound. The first sound is the whoosh of your arm and the scuff of your feet as you pivot. A highly sensitive predator can triangulate the origin of the throw before the object even lands. Furthermore, if you use a continuous noise decoy, like a radio, they will investigate, destroy it, and then immediately widen their search pattern in an agitated state. You have just poked the hornet's nest. A decoy must be a terminal distraction. It needs to be far away, and it needs to be timed. You need remote triggers, string lines, timers, or electronic remotes if you have the discipline to shield the RF signal. Never initiate a sound decoy from your current position. If you are being hunted, you can set acoustic traps. This is defensive perimeter security. String empty cans with pebbles across choke points? No. That alerts you, but it also tells the predator exactly where the breach is. Instead, you want misdirection arrays. Place wind chimes in trees 500 yards away from your camp. Tie them down so they don't ring. Run a tripwire from your perimeter to the tie-down. If an intruder, human or creature, crosses your line, it releases the chimes way over there. The predator investigates the chimes, drawing them away from you. You can also use sound to mask your escape. If you have to run, trigger a massive noise source. Break a window, set off a car alarm in the opposite direction. You are creating a noise smoke grenade. It blinds their sensors with data overload. But remember, once you go loud, you have crossed the Rubicon. You have to move fast, because once the noise stops, the silence is heavier than before. The final complication is adaptation. These things are biological, or advanced AI. They learn. The first time you use a wind-up toy, it works. The second time, they might recognize the acoustic signature of the spring mechanism. They will start to filter out bait. Even worse, they might learn to associate the sound of the decoy with the presence of humans nearby. I've seen this in hunting dogs. I suspect it applies here. If every time a car alarm goes off, they find human tracks leading away from it, they will stop attacking the car and start looking for the runner. Your tactics must evolve. You cannot use the same sound twice. You have to vary the frequency, the duration, and the location. You are playing a chess game against a grandmaster of auditory processing. We used to fear the dark. Now we fear the crunch. The psychological toll of living in a quiet place reality is unsustainable for most. You cannot laugh. You cannot cry. You cannot listen to music. It strips away the humanity. But the ones who survive are the ones who embrace the silence. They become ghosts. They learn to communicate with a look. They move with a fluidity that looks like dance. They understand that every object in their hand is a potential betrayal. This isn't just about survival skills. It's about a fundamental shift in how you interact with the physical world. You become lighter. You become softer. You stop existing in the auditory spectrum. But don't get comfortable. Evolution is an arms race. If we get quieter, they will get more sensitive. Or they will change their mode. Maybe they start hunting by smell. Maybe they develop thermal vision to spot the heat signature of us holding our breath. Or maybe the next wave of creatures won't just listen for us. Maybe they will start mimicking us. Imagine hearing your child's voice calling for help from the darkness. It sounds perfect. The frequency is right. But your child is sitting next to you, mouth taped shut, eyes wide with terror. That is the next phase, acoustic mimicry. Luring us out not by our noise, but by our empathy. The physics of sound is just the first layer of the sensory war. We have mastered the art of silence today, but silence is useless if you light up like a flare on the thermal scope. The creatures that hunt by sound are often the vanguard for the ones that hunt by heat. You have quieted your gear, but have you masked your infrared signature? Have you thought about how your body heat radiates through that soundproof insulation? If you want to know how to disappear completely, not just from the ears, but from the eyes that see the heat of your blood, you need to be here for the next briefing. Secure your spot now, because the quiet won't save you from what comes next. You survived the simulation. Now survive the reality. Equip yourself at the official supply depot. Because if the world is going to end, you might as well look prepared.